what I think humor is, it's like a way to kind of express yourself and also talk about issues in a way that isn't dry. Like, it's like there's some deep stuff being talked about. One of my, there was this famous, it wasn't famous at all. It's this HBO show that lasted 2 seconds, but they had a trailer for it. And the trailer, the guy, in the trailer, it had this line that always stuck with me. And it was like, get them laughing, slip them the truth. And that's really what humor's about is it's not it's not necessarily making fun of, but it's illuminating.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. I'm Bob Nickman. My guest today is SAM TRIPOLI, and we are going to be talking about humor and spirituality. But first, I'd like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. You can see photos of all my guests, hear all the episodes, read the synopses of the episodes, little bio on myself, and a donate button if you'd like to support the show. As I said before, my guest today is SAM TRIPOLI, who is host of the Zero podcast with SAM TRIPOLI. I'm saying his name a lot. And we're doing a swap cast, so we just decided we wanted to talk about humor and spirituality, so that's what we're doing today. We are both stand-up comedians. We're friends, and we are both very interested in body, mind, and spirit, those topics. And we wanted to delve a little deeper into what humor's all about and joy and laughter and really what's going on underneath that. And there's some anecdotes about the stand-up world that we've both come from and some thoughts on what humor is and the different types of humor. It was a really fun podcast because, there's a shorthand in the way we speak to each other because we've known each other a long time and having been in the same profession, you know how that is. So let's listen in to the first swap cast between The Exploding Human and the Zero podcast. Please welcome my guest, SAM TRIPOLI.
I want to say that you're a very important person to me, and I mean that in all seriousness. I owe you an apology also in a weird way because when we first met, man, you were from a generation of comics, and trust me, I'm old, so I'm not trying to be like you, but you were from a generation of comics that I always felt I got judged by for my crudeness and my dark comedy. But man, getting to know you over these last, especially during this whole pandemic that's going on, whatever we're dealing with, and you and I have a relationship in another situation. I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but to get to know you through that, man, you have a wonderful dark sense of humor that I really love and I really respect it. And I just wanted you to know that I have a lot of love and respect for you. So I really do appreciate you coming on my show. It means a lot to me. You're very important to me.
Well, again, I love having you on my show if we're going to be doing this one together. I never judged your comedy. Maybe people, my peers, I'm about 10 years older than you, I guess, but I never had that. I always loved I love anybody that pushes the limits and is a little dark. That I enjoy that. That makes me laugh.
Well, I get to hear your humor almost every night, and it's always such a wonderful thing to hear because, we're going through this chaos right now. Sometimes it's really hard to laugh. And you are great at just saying the right thing at the right time. And, it's wonderful to hear because I think some people don't realize that, spirituality, sobriety, all that stuff doesn't mean you got to be like walking on water and suddenly be like the King's Speech Cadesa and all that stuff. That you could just really be
Yes.
raw and real, and just like also be like one with the universe. And I think it's wonderful. And I really do appreciate all your jokes all the time, man.
Thanks, man. I love to laugh, and it's my favorite thing. I've always been, I have a dark side, obviously, and a sad side, and that serious side. But I think that there's, you can't have dark without light, and light without dark, and positivity without negativity. And um, there is a joy in finding humor inside or within something that's a little darker, don't you think?
I think that's life.
It's
I think that's
survival.
how we deal with the darkness is finding the humor in it. I think people, at some point somewhere being offended became this like felony that like just we had to like it was like that it had to be stopped at all costs. And I'm just like, man, if you're offended, that that means an emotional reaction happened. That's a beautiful thing. It doesn't always have to be positive. It's okay to be angry at something. It's fine. That's an emotion. And I think we've just kind of looked at it the wrong way. And also, my opinion, if you get offended by jokes, your life is going too good, and you're probably pampered, in my honest opinion.
Well, you're probably right about that. And I'm also, the only jokes and I wouldn't even say the word is offended, if they're poorly executed and not that funny, they're offensive in that the art form has been bastardized and not performed well. That's a different issue than certain subject matters. And certain subject matters can be, if they're deftly executed, you can really enjoy almost anything. I
Yeah,
mean, I've
I
seen
agree
people
with
do
that.
funny shit about rape, which is not a funny thing, but I've seen them take it and take something that horrific and make it into something where you're like, it's not really about that, it's something else, and
I
they've
totally agree. I totally agree. And it's like George Carlin said, anything could be funny. It's like
anything.
someone will rape. Well, what if Daffy Duck rapes Mickey Mouse? He goes, that's pretty funny. And he has a point there. Now, it doesn't mean it also, I think people, the thing about humor is, man, that people who don't do it see it as this kind of patty cakes thing. It's like meant to be like, yay, happy time. It's all good. Yay, yay, yay. And it's like what I think humor is, it's like a way to kind of express yourself and also talk about issues in a way that isn't dry. Like, it's like there's some deep stuff being talked about. One of my, there was this famous, it wasn't famous at all. It's this HBO show that lasted 2 seconds, but they had a trailer for it. And the trailer, the guy, in the trailer, it had this line that always stuck with me. And it was like, get them laughing, slip them the truth. And that's really what humor's about. It's not, it's not necessarily making fun of, but it's illuminating
Yes.
a situation, a way of discussing it, bringing it out to the open. It doesn't have to be mocking, not making fun of something. Just because you're talking about something doesn't mean you're degrading it or talking down to it. It's you're discussing the issue.
Exactly. And the truth is the truth. And a good, to me, a really good stand up or any type of humor is really, it's a safety valve for society. Society gets pent up and it gets tense about these things, and a good performer will be let off the steam by getting to the truth and finding something that is elevating about it, or so true that you can't help but have an emotional release with laughter. And that is, that's the healing part of it. I think. I mean, it makes me feel good to laugh at something that is so goddamn true, you can't deny it.
Uh, I um my belief was that the only person that could really talk truth back in the day when we had royals and all that was the jester. He was the only one that was allowed to say any criticism to the king because he could make everybody laugh. And that's always what I believe is happening. I do believe that is why when you see censorship it's really going after comedians for a couple reasons. One is like they tend to talk the truth, and the powers that be don't necessarily like that. And like, let's face it, man, stand-up comedy could be done for nothing. You don't really need a microphone. You really could just stand and have a bunch of people around you, and you could be shouting your jokes and still people laughing, and you don't need anybody's money to produce it. And that's another scary thing. That's
The
another
freedom.
podcast there, but it's stand-up comedy is one of the, I think it can be limited in the sense that we have to elicit a certain response. And I want to get into that too with you because, we just saw the Comedy Store doc, but that it could reach so many people and you don't need anybody's help. And I think that scares a lot of people.
It does, because the freedom that's involved in that, there's no, you're basically can't control someone else's mind and their voice. You can't do it. It's, there's no money involved. The person can just get out there and say what they got to say. And it's like, oh man, it's out now. You can't stop it. That's what's so beautiful about it.
And it's
the power, and you don't want to misuse that power. It's kind of like fire. Fire can be used to cook and to heat a home, or do all kinds of great stuff, and it can also be extremely destructive if
anything
misused.
powerful like that. A gun could be a great tool for protection, or it could be used as a murder weapon. It's like, but it has no form. It's like, who is the person using it? It's like when I was coming up doing martial arts, my Sifu once said, it's like, the thing about martial arts is even quote unquote bad people can learn it. So it's all that whoever is wielding the tool is the person that really is the whole thing right there.
Right. You have to look at intent. That's the most important thing. I think if you realize that someone is being, their intention is to evoke a joyous response and to point out the truth and elicit laughter, that's very different than someone who's going to wield comedy to be hurtful. I don't think that is in the people who like to be offended. They're going to get hurt because they like it. They get something out of it.
No, I totally agree with you on that one. For me, it's like, how can you deal with what's going on in your life right now? And how can you turn it around and start like walking to your dreams, man? That's really what this is about. Like, where do we live? Who are we? What are we about? And I think the person that is going to step into that kind of space that Richard Pryor had is the person that's going to be able to unite everybody in terms of like getting away from, I'm this kind of, I'm a black comic, I'm a white comic, I'm a gay comic, and being like everybody, that we're just people. That's what I really think is going to happen, is that there's going to be a unifier that comes out there and gets everybody going, you know what, man, you're right. We don't have to be fighting over scraps or with each other and all that stuff. And we're all just, my opinion, that we live in a very special place and we're all gods having a human experience. And that's kind of what I think is going to unite a lot of people. And that's the comic that does that. And maybe that's a lot to ask from somebody, but I think that's who does it.
That's really beautiful. I mean, this idea that somebody's going to come in and connectedness is going to be the premise of their entire act, of like, let's, I guess sort of Will Rogers was supposed to be that guy. He was the good-natured kind of, never met a man I didn't like. Remember that Lenny Clark used to have the best joke. He goes, Will Rogers said, I never met a man I didn't like. Man, I could introduce him to some assholes.
That is a great joke. That is a great joke.
But it's such a, but I think you might be right about that. I have a statue out in my yard of the laughing Buddha. And I'm not a Buddhist, but I've always loved that image of this chubby, laughing, spiritual teacher. As humor was the essence of it, because the spiritual path, in my opinion, is there's a lot of dichotomy and a lot of irony, and that's where the humor comes from. That you're pursuing this very godlike thing, but you're stuck in this human form.
Yes.
That's inherently hilarious because it's a dilemma. It's like
100%. And that is it. And like the Boo say, there will be suffering. And I think that is exactly what you're talking about. Those moments of like, you're like, what the fuck is going on? That's where like the God in you and the human life you're living kind of come into this conflict right there, man. It's like, why is this not working the way I wanted it? So I don't think this person is going to be like kumbaya. I think this person's going to be like really real and raw and have everybody relate to it in a way that brings people together. Cause I think we're heading that way as much as it's so diverse. I mean, so much friction between everybody right now that eventually people are just going to get tired of it.
Yeah, I sort of see like the earth and societies as like breathing, and there's in breaths and out breaths where society gets pretty tight and dark and not comfortable, and then just by the nature of the way things work, it breathes out and grows and becomes lighter. And I'd like to think that we're going to be coming out of that darker period because we've been in it for a while. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but I do notice if you ever watch little kids play, like a room full of kids, it gets real quiet, real quiet. And you don't hear it. And then all of a sudden there's this big cacophony of noise and activity. And then it gets quiet again. If you ever get a chance, you'll see when your little girls go to school, watch when they're in even nursery school and kindergarten, you'll see the classroom itself breathe with noise and activity to quiet and non-activity. It's a really interesting thing to see.
And you can see that on stage as well. You can see that when you're performing this, like when you first walk up, it's kind of like, it's like when Bill Burr says, when you're famous, every show is a home game. And when you're not famous, every show is an away game. Hold on one second. I can be there in a couple minutes. Okay. Babies.
Should we tell the audience what's happened, or do you
So
wanna...
basically my daughter just, was eating and she was sleeping and she had a throw up, and now mom has been nice enough to let me finish this out, and I'm gonna have to go clean it. But I just love this conversation so much. I just love it, man.
She's how old is she now?
I have 2 9-month-olds.
Yeah. So yeah, we didn't want the audience to think that they were 40.
Yeah. So I have these children that somehow I'm 8 years older than, and and they're wonderful people. Bob, I just want to end on this, and then I would love to follow this up maybe at the sometime either later in the week or next week, and we could do a part 2 on this, because I could talk comedy forever. But the thing I've noticed, dude, is the darker the comic on stage, the nicer he tends to be off stage.
Why is that? That is so, I used to have this discussion with a friend of mine when we were in college about people that come off kind of gruff and difficult. And then you kind of get to know them, and they're very kind, and they're just sort of wounded by the harshness of life. But once you get past those wounds, they're really people. And we left off with you having to end because your daughter threw up and you had to clean it up. So, and I love the idea of talking about this sort of expansive spiritual world and consciousness and the universe in juxtaposition to the daily tasks of cleaning up vomit, making a living,
Yeah, right.
getting dressed, going to the grocery. I mean, that stuff is I always wonder, how do I make that stuff, those tasks, a spiritual thing, because like when you think about like the Japanese tea ceremony, that is actually about, and probably the British started that way too, but fuck them. But the idea of being mindful was what that tea ceremony was about. Every day to make tea in a mindful way, so you're doing a simple task but being present.
Yeah, you know what, and I think I'm trying to do that more. I'm not the best at it. I'm really trying to get off my phone. I'm not the best at it. And I'm trying to like get on my knees and pray every day. I'm not the best at that. I am trying. I'm trying to do little things like that. And I'm trying to be in the moment with my children. That's the biggest thing. Because if I'm not, they will shove something in their mouth that they can't swallow. And I can't have that on my watch. That's basically when I'm watching my kids, it's just like, get them through till mom gets here. And once mom's there, everything's going to be fine. But dad just got to get them to when mom's there. That's my whole thing.
That's exactly it. If the dads can keep them alive till the moms get home, you don't want to be the person responsible for them wrapping a cord around their neck and
Yeah,
jumping
for
off the
sure,
couch.
dude.
You know, there's something about, and your twins are 9 months. They're still very little. They're babies, and when you look at a baby, a newborn, or even 9 months, or even up to like 4 and 5, even I'm pushing it here. There's there's a feeling that you get that is very beautiful because they seem to be closer to this spiritual thing than the rest of us who have been worn down and sanded off by life. And I think you can take the hardest, most hardened criminal who's been abused and treated horribly, and put a baby in front of them, and they would smile.
Dude, let me tell you something, man. Obviously LA has gotten a little crazy with, the homeless situation. I feel for them. You don't know what they've gone through in their life, but the homeless, the mental illness situation. But when I watch my kids, I don't care how crazy somebody is. When they see two little girls in a stroller, they they just chill. They
Yeah.
just chill. Nobody wants to pop off when babies are around. It's chill. There is this herd must protect the youth kind of instinctual thing that goes on, that okay, we got to everyone, no popping off right now, no being a crazy person. No matter how mentally hurt they have been in their life that's caused them to have problems,
Yeah.
they still recognize that one universal thing.
Which is the purity of just the life force. I think that's what it is. People respond to that, and that's who we are underneath all the nonsense and the characters we play and the belief systems we develop and all that stuff. There is something, and I think that's where humor, since we are, historically we're comics, that's where the humor thing comes in, because that, to me, when it's not like done cruelly or anything like that, but when it's done with that inner laugh that's so joyful, that can be one of the most healing things that there is. And here I was talking about this with our mutual friend Karen Rentowski about the dark side, the shadow side of, and that comics are very in touch with that side. We're not afraid of it like a lot of people. We are willing to look at it and treat it with the same equality as the lighter side. And to find the humor in both of those places is really, to me, a spiritual task when done properly.
I couldn't agree more. And it's almost like a badge of honor, where it's like outside of rappers, I don't know anywhere where it's like you wear your defects more. Comedy, it's mostly misfits. I mean, you see a lot of female comics, there's a lot of lesbians who are hilarious because they just never fit into your typical high school life. They knew they were different. They probably didn't want to come out at that moment. Maybe now they are, but back when they were growing up, it wasn't as acceptable. So the only way they could find attention and the fit in was being the funny girl. And that later on went on to, help them in their career.
And also the other part of it, that when somebody makes me laugh, I like being around them. It makes you feel good. There is a very, I'll just use the word healing again, aspect to humor, which to me is a spiritual thing. That if a group of people are laughing, there's an unspoken camaraderie that's going on in the moment, and an understanding and an elevation of that group of people. And so if someone who is disseminating comedy is really doing, at its best, and I'm not, this is a little lofty, but spiritual work in one way. It doesn't have to be this sort of guru kind of woo-woo meditative moment with profound sayings. I mean, there's a lot to be said for just that moment of people enjoying life.
When we look at comedy now, what do you think's going to happen with it? I mean, like, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there. I think, just watching like kind of what Saturday Night Live has allowed some of these big name comics to talk about, that Comedy Store doc, we saw, Brian Holtzman doing some pretty politically incorrect comedy on there. I have a feeling
the tide is slowly going to turn. You'll always have a group of people on the internet calling for your head, but I think the movement behind that is slowly going away. And I think, because for me, man, I'm not sure if we talked about this last time, but for me, man, I think when you don't want to you can't make a joke about a group, that's kind of like looking down at them, that they can't handle it. That, it's like, and I'm not talking about hate speech. Obviously, hate speech is wrong. But
Yeah.
it's like everybody does something funny. I think you should talk about it. And some people don't think, and I think we're kind of entering this place where people are more open-minded to it, to hearing it. And I think this next generation, because everybody zigs, whatever the generation before you did, you want to do the opposite.
Exactly. You want to burn it down and do something new. I mean, I read something about art, and they said each new art movement should destroy the one before it. There's anarchy in comedy. That's really what it is. It's, you're tearing something down and disassembling it and putting it back together in a new way to point out where it's working and where it's not working. And I think that's important for, new generations to take a look at things and say, you know what, this is kind of stupid, or this doesn't really work anymore. And with the way social media has become, I think that's opened up even more for people to experiment comedically. And, the society, once you take a lot of these arbitrary rules off, the society will decide what works on its own. You don't need these artificial rules to say what's right and what's wrong. People, I think, myself, most people are pretty damn decent, and they really, the people I know one to one, even if I don't agree with them, they're all right. They want the same stuff. They want a nice place to live and some food and a little sex, a job.
No, dude, I say that about the whole world, man. I've traveled the world. I did USOs all over the world, and you meet the locals, and they're everybody's same. They want to laugh, they want to feed their family.
Yeah, and that's what. And I have to say, I think travel. Now that you're saying this, travel is one of the greatest ways to eliminate prejudice and people digging their heels in on these narrow ideas. The more you travel, the more you see we are so much more the same than we are different. Especially when you go to other countries. It's just, you go to another country, you don't even have to speak the language. You can see who the serious guy is, who the comic is in the room, who the trashy chick is. You can see all that stuff in any
God
group
bless
of
the
people.
trashy chick. Yeah, dude, I'm with you, man. I'm with you, dude. You go around the world, you just see that we are more similar than we are different. And it's very interesting. That is one thing that's somewhat limiting about comedy, and why music, Coldplay can play anywhere they want.
Yes.
Even if they don't speak English, the crowd still sings the words to the song because they like it. Stand-up's very interesting because before, like things like Netflix and Amazon Prime and all that, we all had our own little culture, and we had our cultural references, and you go somewhere else, they wouldn't necessarily get it. I remember going to China like 15 years ago with Steve Byrne, and nobody got any of my references.
No.
And then I went back there a couple of years ago. They got everything because of Netflix and all these streaming services. And I do think that is one thing that's kind of cool about the internet. It's allowing us all to kind of connect on the same thing.
Yeah, it's just the shrinking of the planet with the new level of contact that we all have with each other. Although, I was in, and maybe this is a while ago, it's almost 10 years now. I was in Russia working for Sony International, and there was guys I worked with. They were Russian, but they spoke English. But they wanted to see my stand-up, so I showed them some stuff. And they were like, I don't understand the references. It's like, and their joke technology was maybe 20 years behind ours, and their sitcoms and the type of humor they found funny. They were more clown vaudeville type oriented. Now, maybe it's gotten more sophisticated since then. But I do have to say they were, because of the restrictions, that they were very clever with their torrent sites, and they turned me on to so many great TV shows from England and other countries that I didn't know about because they had to be resourceful. Here's a weird question for you. Do you remember your very first joke, even as a kid, or something you did? to get a laugh.
Oh, okay.
Friends.
My first just being a kid joke.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's a
just something you
great
did
question.
where you went, "Oh man, this feels good." I remember mine, so I'll tell you. But I wanted to hear yours.
No, I don't remember I just knew I liked to get laughs, man. That's all I
Yeah.
knew. I would make, this is how I'm aging myself, but I would have like, when my mom would let door-to-door salesmen come into, that's how long ago this is. Door-to-door salesmen would come into your house and they would
Yeah.
try to sell your mom a vacuum or banger,
Yeah.
one or the other, right? They would try to make something happen, right?
The Fuller Brush Man.
And I would just try to make them laugh so much. One time I was throwing down a banana peel and acting like I was slipping. And the guy was like, okay, kid, it's funny. I don't think your mom wants you to fuck up her carpet with the fucking banana, dude. What was your first joke?
I was all right. I was in Hebrew school, and I was about, I think it was first or second grade. So what are you, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there, 8?
Yeah.
And for some reason there was a problem with, they didn't have enough teachers and they weren't sure what was going on, so they put 3 classes into one classroom and left. There was no adult, and the kids were going crazy. They're on desks and they're yelling and they're throwing things. I mean, it was pure mayhem, and I was scared because I didn't know most of these kids, and they seem to. Do you ever have this where you go, how do these people know how to act this way right now? Like, they're so confident. I thought there was confidence and some sort of insight that I didn't have. They were just idiots. I didn't know that, but I was. So I'm
Well, they're
watching
also,
this.
what did you say, 6 years old, 7 years old?
Yeah, like 7. But I was
Yeah.
scared. I was sort of scared because it was mayhem and chaos. And I'm in the back, and the teacher comes in, and she went nuts. She was so angry. She was this tall, bony woman, and she goes, "The noise and the misbehaving, I won't stand for it." And I'm in the back, and I go, "So why don't you sit down?"
Oh, snaps.
So she went, "Who said that?" Right. And it was like, and I just got real quiet, and I sort of disappeared behind a bigger kid, and I didn't get caught. And kids were laughing, and she was like, "Who said that?" Somebody, and so that nobody ratted on me. So after the class, these 2 or 3 guys came up to me. They go, "Hey man, was that you that did that joke?" And I was like, no, I didn't want to get in trouble. And then they're like, one guy goes, "Yeah, it was, man. I saw you do it. It was great." And they go, "That was," and so they started giving me all this
Positive reinforcement.
yeah, I became like the guy.
I
I
remember.
had instant friends, and I was like a hero to these kids.
And little did you know that would become your life, right?
No, I had no idea. It was great.
So hilarious, man. That's so hilarious. Were you a big kid, a little kid?
Little.
Yeah. So
Tiny.
you had to learn that, dude. You had to learn to make people laugh, or else you were going to get your ass beat. Thank you, Bob, for coming on. Thank you, everybody,
Sam.
for checking out Zero. We love you guys very much.
And a big thanks from me to Sam Tripoli for participating in our Swapcast. I hope you guys enjoyed that show. I did. I enjoyed doing it. The explodinghuman.com is my website if you'd like to visit that. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Much appreciation for you listening into the show. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.